Hello everyone, and welcome back. I'm Rae. So today we're going to talk about Idi Amin Dada, Ugandan president that made white men kneel before him. Idi Amin was the third president of Uganda and he ruled from 1971 to 1979. Idi Amin is known as one of the most brutal, ruthless dictators of the 20th century. He came to power through a bloodless coup. He had been commander-in-chief of Milton Obote's regime, or army, and one day Milton Obote had gone to attend a Commonwealth Summit meeting in Singapore in January of 1971, and Idi Amin just decided to stage a coup and take over power. And 2 weeks later, he declared himself as the president of Uganda. So meaning Obote never came back to Uganda. He instead fled to Tanzania. And Idi Amin would rule Uganda for the next 8 years. So Idi Amin is very, very popular for being brutal and most specifically killing people. And he's also said that Amin used to keep the heads of his enemies in his fridge, and he also used to drink their blood. In addition to that, Idi Amin launched an economic war in 1972 against Asians who were living in Uganda. So these Asians were mainly of Indian descent and they had been brought into Uganda by the British. And Britain had constructed the Uganda Railway, which was running from Mombasa up to Kisumu, starting in 1896, and everyone who was employed to construct on this railway was of Indian descent. Locals were not given any jobs. So by 1962, very many Indians had settled in Uganda, up to 80,000 of them. But the problem was these Indians were controlling 2/3 of Uganda's economy. They were just 1% of the population, but they were the most wealthy. They owned the factories, they owned all the shops. So Amin felt like that was a threat to the country. So what Amin did, he launched an economic war against them and told them, all Asians in Uganda, I'm giving you 90 days to leave the country. And if you don't leave the country, you're going to regret your decision staying. In addition to that, he also expropriated all their properties and gave them to his followers and to the local people. So I'm going to read for you and quote his words that he said in an interview at the time. I took this decision for the economy of Uganda, and I must make sure that every Ugandan get the fruit of independence. Since independence, Uganda is not yet independent. Even when the British handed over on 9th October 1962, Uganda is still not independent. Uganda will be independent after my decision. I want to see that Kampala Street is not full of Indians. It must be proper black, and administration in these shops run by Ugandans. During the British colonial rule, Britain had invested in the education of the Asians, so they were the only ones educated, the locals weren't educated, and they also had the jobs. So Amin said, you know what, I want to teach the British people a lesson, and I want them out of my country. So after expelling all the Asians from Uganda, Amin broke diplomatic relations with Britain and India as well. In addition to that, he started now collaborating. He was no longer pro-Western. You know, he didn't want anything to do with the Western countries. Instead, he started collaborating with people like Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, Mobutu Sese Seko of Zaire, the Western Union, Eastern Germany. So those were the people that Idi Amin was dealing with. After breaking diplomatic relations with Britain and India, Idi Amin was very proud of himself, and he declared himself conqueror of the British Empire in Africa and in Uganda as well, to be particular, and he gave that title to himself. In addition to that, he made a publicity stunt, and one day there was a cocktail dinner or event. He got 4 British men to carry him shoulder high and raise him up as a conqueror of the British Empire. So the message he was sending out was, you know what, you colonized us, but right now the tables have turned and now I'm your master. In addition to that, in a certain ceremony still around the same time in 1975, he made 14 European men who had Ugandan citizenship at the time to kneel before him and pledge allegiance to the country and to him as well, because he didn't want anything to do with the British. So if you were going to be in his country, he made them kneel down and swear that they would be loyal to Uganda and loyal to his leadership and his regime as well. In 1976, there was a dramatic raid on Entebbe airport where Israeli commanders rescued hostages from a hijacked plane that Idi Amin had allowed to land on Entebbe airport. So the hijackers were pro-Palestinian militants. So the Israelis, during this rescue mission, killed 45 Ugandan soldiers. They killed all the hijackers, and of the Israelis, only one was killed and maybe 5 of them were wounded. 248 passengers had been hijacked, so non-Israel hostages had been released and allowed to fly to Paris. So 106 of them were remaining, who are mainly Israelis. So of these, 102 of them were rescued and 3 were killed. This Operation Entebbe made Idi Amin look very weak because 45 of his good men were all killed. So it is said that Kenya supported Israel during this rescue mission, and Idi Amin retaliated by killing very many Kenyans who were in Uganda, and some of them fled away as well. After this incident, Britain blocked diplomatic ties with Uganda officially, and this was after the death of Sarah Block, who was a British national. She was among the hostages that were killed. And after breaking these diplomatic ties, Amin was very happy with himself and he felt he had conquered the British. So he declared himself officially the conqueror of the British Empire and gave himself that title. During Idi Amin's regime, Jean Bekasa Bidel, the president of Central African Republic at the time, came to visit him in Uganda, and Amin was impressed by his outfit. Jean Bidel had these very many chains and metals all over his outfit. So Amin thought that was so cool, and he also started wearing the same, copying him from then. In addition to that, Amin liked to feel big all the time, so he kept giving himself these very many titles. So his full title was His Excellency, President for Life, Field Marshal, Alhaji Dr. Idi Amin Dada, Lord of all beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea, and Conqueror of the British Empire. That was just one title all for Idi Amin Dada. So during Amin's era, there were coups attempted on him as well by Milton Obote, because he had also taken power by a coup. So he always felt insecure, and any person within his army that would be suspected to be supporting Milton Obote would be executed immediately. He would be put on firing squad. So there were wonders, or questions as to whether Idi Amin was a normal functioning human being. It is said that when he was younger, he had syphilis, and maybe syphilis kept growing on and messed his mind, or maybe he was mad, or maybe was it just his brutal nature. But Idi Amin was also not very educated. He stopped in primary 5. So he didn't know much about leadership or how to communicate, or with educated people, or handle diplomatic relations. The only thing he knew to keep him moving was to be brutal and ruthless. So that's how he managed to stay in power for the next 8 years. So Idi Amin, despite his brutal nature, was also loved by the masses. He was a very, very charismatic leader. He attracted crowds. People loved him as well. He loved sports, to be particular. He's a very good swimmer. He was a very good boxer. He loved playing music, and playing musical instruments. He was also Uganda's light heavyweight champion for 9 years. So he also had a very light side to him, apart from his brutal nature. Idi Amin was a polygamous man. He had 7 official wives, and it is also said that he fathered up to 54 children. So of these 7 official wives, he divorced 3 of them. But in 1974, one of his wives, called Kay, died, but she died under mysterious circumstances. Her body was later discovered, and it was mutilated and in a bad condition. So it is also said that Idi Amin could have actually killed his wife. In April of 1979, Milton Obote attacked Idi Amin's regime, and they came through Tanzania and attacked all the way to Kampala. So Idi Amin was overpowered, by Obote and his men, and they were being supported by Tanzania as well. So Idi Amin was not captured, but he fled to Libya, and then later went into exile in Saudi Arabia. So he stayed in Saudi Arabia until his death in 2003. That's why he remained with some of his family members. And in 1981, there's a film released about his story and his life, and it would be the one of many films that would be later released in the future about Idi Amin. Idi Amin later died in 2003 of August. He died in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. He suffered kidney failure and he had been hospitalized for a very long time. At the time, he was in his late 70s, because it is said he had been born anywhere between 1923 to 1928. His year of birth was really not clear according to different sources. But his body was never returned to Uganda because of the many crimes that he had committed against humanity in Uganda. But until today, Idi Amin is very, very popular among the Ugandans, especially the Arab people, especially the young people. They enjoy stories of Idi Amin because he was this ruthless dictator that stood against the whites and wanted nothing to do with the white people. And he said Uganda is for Ugandans. So he's most popularly remembered and loved for his economic war, and also known as the father of Uganda's economic independence. So thank you so much for watching. Share your thoughts, any thoughts in the comment section, and check out my YouTube channel called Stories UG, and also my Instagram and Twitter. All the links are pinned on the top of the comment section. And see you on the next story. Bye.